Hey, how's it going, guys? Ricky Summer here, and today I've come back in time to compare Oddworld Soulstorm with the original Abe's Exoddus. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Upgrade your stream. nerdordie.com.
Alright, a brief history if you'll indulge me for a moment. The year is 1997, and Oddworld Abe's Odyssey is released. This is one of the very first games I ever owned, and it's so important to me. It didn't just shape my taste in gaming, more importantly, it shaped my love of world building and atmosphere, and to this day I place so much importance on setting an atmosphere in games, and I think it's largely because of Abe's Odyssey. The very next year, 1998, Abe's Exoddus was released, and this is one of my all-time favorite games. Of all time, man. It's just more Abe's Odyssey, but better. With more mechanics that just work, man. You know, every time in Abe's Odyssey, I was like, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if I could do this? Abe's Exoddus friggin' delivered, man. You can call this Oddworld Norman Reedus, because it delivers. Anyway, so I was 7 and 8 when these games were released. They're so important to me. And as soon as I got access to the internet, I was on there Googling. Except we didn't have Google, we had like Alta Vista search engine or whatever it was. I was friggin' searching, man, you know, when's the sequel to Abe's Exoddus coming out? More Oddworld games, where you at? And I found out that Oddworld Inhabitants, the developers of the Oddworld franchise, had in store for us a quintology. 5 magnificent Oddworld games that were going to span multiple genres and tell more stories and delve deeper into the lore of Oddworld, and I was pogged out of my gourd. Imagine little 8-9-year-old Rick pogged out of his freaking gourd for more Oddworld. They even talked about doing a city builder or an RTS or something like that, and just imagine, man, that's one of my favorite genres. Even back then, I was really captivated by building and strategy and management, and just to have Oddworld in that setting, just, oh, friggin', I'm so nostalgic for what could have been, what we could have had. Anyways, then in 2001 we got Munch's Odyssey, which I didn't play at the time because it was an Xbox exclusive and I didn't own an Xbox. Furthermore, it was a different style of game. It was a 3D third-person game. I think it's on GOG, and I think I actually own it. And I tried to play it once, and it didn't grab me, man, because it wasn't the Oddworld that I grew up with, that I fell in love with. And it's not just nostalgia. The Oddworld formula from the first 2 games is so tight, you know? And this switch up to a different perspective and a different style of game with collectibles, like it felt like Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie or something like that, which is fine in its own right, but it just, for me, it doesn't fit into the Oddworld formula. Somewhere along the line, the dream fell apart. Maybe they ran out of money. I don't know. I actually can't remember the details of it, because, you know, when you're 8 or 9, you don't really think about the financials of game development, but all I knew was the quintology was no more. We weren't getting it. Then in 2005, we got Stranger's Wrath, which I just haven't played at all. Again, Xbox exclusive. I didn't own an Xbox. I'm not sure if it's on GOG though. Hang on, let me have a look. Yo, it is on GOG. The HD version for 66% off right now. Maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll get it and finally play Stranger's Wrath. Anyway, in 2014, they released a remake of the original Abe's Odyssey called New N Tasty. And as far as I remember, as far as I can tell, it's a carbon copy, like screen to screen, level to level of Abe's Odyssey. And that's great-ish. You know, I have played it twice, actually. It looks pretty good. You know, it's Abe's Odyssey. The only thing is it kind of loses some of the vibe because of the new camera angle. Yes, the new camera angle looks impressive, and it's a good job of modernizing an old classic from 97. But what was so good about the original Abe's Odyssey is because you were locked to that screen and it didn't move with you, it wasn't a rolling camera, you didn't know what was on the next screen. There was always that mystery, that dread of what was to come, of what you couldn't see. I mean, we are most afraid of the unknown after all, and I feel like Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exoddus just captured that so beautifully. And you lost that in New N Tasty because the camera followed you, because you could kind of see more of what was coming. There wasn't that suspense of the unknown. And as such, I consider New N Tasty to be just fine. You know, it's fun enough. It is the original game, just not quite as good. Fast forward to the present. The year is 2021, and we've got Oddworld Soulstorm. Now, this is meant to be a reimagining, reboot of Abe's Exoddus. It's quite different, man. It's very, very quite different. So yeah, it's still got that rolling camera thing from New and Tasty. I expected that they'd keep that because, you know, they have to try and modernize it. I feel like you maybe couldn't get away with that, you know, single screen loading in new screens when you go off the edge of the screen kind of thing from the original game, even though that was so good and so integral to maintaining that mystery and that dread and suspense. I don't expect them to keep that. So yeah, it's still that rolling camera like in New and Tasty, and some of the scenes are so impressive. I'll give this to the new game, to Soulstorm. It looks impressive, man. The set pieces are magnificent. The world building still, Oddworld inhabitants are second to none when it comes to world building. Incredible. Unfortunately, for me, it just changes too much and tries to wrap it up in this veneer of Abe's Exoddus, and it's just not for me, unfortunately. So the original Abe's Exoddus, Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exoddus, they were puzzle platformers. Very precise. The movement was kind of stuck to this grid, so that when you took a step, you knew how far you were stepping. When you took a jump, you knew how far you were jumping. It was very precise. You look at a scene and you go, that's probably how I handle it, and then you know how to get through it. You know the tools in your arsenal, you know how they work, and you know how to implement them. Oddworld Soulstorm is no longer a puzzle platformer, it's an action platformer. You don't have that very precise movement like you used to have. We've got a double jump now, which just feels mad out of place, man. You've got combat sections, like straight up. There's a boss fight. Remember the throwing mechanic from the original Abe's Odyssey and Exoddus? I'll be honest, that was like the worst part of the game for me. It's kind of not fun. It was oddly finicky, you know, because you had so many variants in how far you could throw it. You had to find the exact right spot in the level to throw it, to hit the thing that you needed to hit. But now, like, the throwing mechanic is incorporated into combat. You've got all these different items and there's crafting, but look, we'll get into that. We'll get into all that. It's not the same game. It's not the game that I grew up with and I fell in love with. And I'm really sorry to say, I really didn't like it. I beat it because I felt I had to, but I really didn't like it. Now, that being said, I really hate being negative and making negative videos and just trashing on games. So instead, we just gotta have a look at some comparisons, how it's different. And, you know, maybe this is going to be just a really huge recommendation to slide on over to GOG and get the original Abe's Exoddus and play that, because it still holds up, man. It's so good. It's like crack cocaine. It's beautiful. All right, so first up, I should have known the game menu, the main menu, it gives it all away. So remember the original main menu with that kind of ancient mystical Mandela thing with Abe's head coming out the middle? So iconic. And he would react to whatever menu option you chose. And then you could go into Gamespeak and actually test out the speech. That was such a big component of the first two games, the fact that you could talk to your allies, the Mudokons, and it wasn't just talking to them and getting them to follow you and whatnot. It was solving puzzles with it. It was like mimic puzzles and that sort of thing, and you had to do whistling puzzles, memory puzzles. It was a puzzle game with like a lot of tension and the occasional little bit of action that was really still just a puzzle but thinly veiled as an action set piece. Actually, the action sequences from the original games was some of the easiest, I think, because it was just like running and jumping. It was a timing puzzle. So you had timing puzzles, you had, you know, memory puzzles, and then Abe's Exoddus ratcheted up a gear, and you had all these different Mudokon types, like they were angry or sad, and you had to apologize to them, or if they were on, hyped up on laughing gas, you had to smack them to whack them out of it. It was this whole thing, man. It was another layer to the puzzling. It wasn't just, hey guys, follow me. It was, what's wrong with you? You know, I gotta treat you in a special way. There were blind Mudokons who you had to babysit, so you had to tell them to stop at the right spot so that they wouldn't like fall off a cliff or something. It was just like, oh man, so engaging, such a beautiful evolution of the original speak system. Soulstorm ain't got that.
Sorry.
So yeah, you do still meet Mudokons and you have to save them and you go, hi, hello, follow me. But that's it, man. That's it. You just go hi and then follow me and wait. That's all you got. That's it. And it's like not really utilized at all. The memory puzzles where you had to like come across a Mudokon gatekeeper or whatever, and they'd whistle stuff at you and you had to mimic them, gone. That's not in there. It's not in there at all.
Stop it.
The extended speech gameplay from Abe's Exoddus, where you'd have to possess a slig and talk to another slig, or do, you know, like a voice puzzle thing, like the voice code thing to get through a door, gone. It's not in there now. What they're replaced with is a loose currency system where you have to find enough moolah in that specific level to open a door. What? So Gamespeak is out, or at least it's been stripped down to its absolute bare minimum. It's now much more actiony. You've got, like I said, the double jump, which just feels weirdly out of place. The original Abe's Odyssey and Exoddus felt like a well-oiled machine. This feels a little more janky. Yeah, there are bugs, and you know, I'm gonna forgive the bugs and assume that they will be fixed at some point, but bugs aside, it still feels imprecise. There's all these jumping puzzles that are actually like straight up, I don't know how I did them. I've beaten the game, and there are full sections of the game that I just kind of bluffed my way through. The monkey bars, I still don't know how to latch onto those because it just seems so imprecise. Sometimes you pass right through it and you hold on. Sometimes you pass through it and you don't. And you don't have to press jump again, because if you do, then you grab on it and you jump again. So that's not it. It's weird, man. It feels imprecise. It doesn't feel like you have the tools to complete these levels. So I got through it through, I don't even want to say trial and error, but I just got through it by like banging my head against a wall. All right, so let's talk about the crafting. When I first heard about this mechanic, I was skeptical, I'll be honest, but I'm like, you know, maybe they'll make it work. Maybe it'll be more of like a RPG adventure game, which could be interesting. I think that could actually really work within the Oddworld setting, an RPG system with like some crafting and whatnot. Why not? You know, give it a try.
Do it.
That's what I thought they were doing here. Nah. So in the original game, it would give you the exact tools you needed to complete a level. You would have the vending machines that you'd walk up to, smack it, and you get a bomb or get a rock or get a Soulstorm brew or something like that. And it was always exactly what you needed. In this, it's still the same thing, but with this added unnecessary layer of crafting that doesn't feel like it makes sense or fits at all. Like I said, I think crafting could have worked in an Oddworld game, even in this perspective, but it just feels like it's the old format, and let's just throw crafting on top of it. So the way it works is you still get everything you need within a level, but you have to search for it. You have to look through trash cans and lockers to find money to get through doors, or to find components to craft, or they just give you vending machines. Sometimes they give you vending machines that give out items for free, and that's usually an indication that, okay, this is the item that you need to complete this next stage. Or they'll give you vending machines that you have to spend money on, moolah, to get the item to then use. And I just didn't take advantage of those vending machines, and I got through fine. So as far as I can tell, when you need an item to progress through a stage, they give it to you for free. And when you don't, but it might be nice to use, then you have to pay for it. But then you also need the money to get through doors. So like, I never actually want to pay for items. And then they give you like 2 vending machines that you're meant to take the components from to craft items that you need. Why? Just give me the vending machine that gives me the completed item. The crafting is an unnecessary extra step in this case. And you could argue that if you've crafted something in a previous level, you can save it and use it in a later level, but it doesn't work like that. The items are reset at the end of every level. So you still end up with the exact same system where the game gives you within the level exactly the items you need to complete that level, but instead you now have to do this annoying searching for things and crafting. Just give me the friggin' vending machine that gives me the item to complete the level. And on top of that, there's all these items, man. There's actually, in my opinion, there's actually too much. There are so many that halfway through the game, I'm like, this is exactly what I had before, but it's called something else. It's the same function, but with a different name and a different polish over the top of it. And then there are items that you use in the first few levels that you never ever see again, ever. There's just too many items, and a lot of them, way too many of them, are used in direct combat. This is not the type of game that should have, in my opinion, combat. There's a boss fight, man. There's a friggin' boss fight in this game. We're going from a puzzle platformer, a slow, methodical, precise puzzle platformer, to a game that makes you fight sligs and do turret defense sections.
Do it.
I'm just trashing on the game, and I really don't want to, because I love this series so much. I honestly do. I want Oddworld inhabitants to do well so they can make more games, because the Oddworld, the lore is so good, and I want more of it. And I know that this is a passion project for them. When they originally set out to do the quintology, who does that? Let's make 5 games, you know? They're clearly passionate about this product, about this world, And I love that they're making games, and I love that they can make games, and I don't want to be like, yo, you made a bad game, get out of here.
Get him.
I love Oddworld so much, and I want them to do it justice, you know, because they've done it. They've done it before. It's their world. They made it. And I kind of feel weird. Like, you know, who am I? I'm just some asshole on the internet saying, hey, yo, your first game was better. Anyway, let's talk about the story, because the story is really, really different. Now, this is going to be subjective. I acknowledge that. But the story, I think, is not as engaging. The cutscenes are really, really good. We used to call them FMV sequences, full motion video sequences. But yeah, they're really good. And honestly, while I was watching the cutscenes, I'm like, I wish this was a movie. I don't want this to be a game. I don't want to play these tedious sections between the cutscenes. I just want to watch this as a movie, because it's quite interesting. Anyway, so remember the intro cutscene to Abe's Exoddus, where they were going through the desert and they had to find Necrom to stop the bad guys from digging up their bones and making Soulstorm brew? It's not really much of a spoiler. It happens literally in the intro cutscene. That is now the first third of the game of Soulstorm. They've turned all that into gameplay, and it's honestly, it's a bit samey. You know, you're being hunted by an airship, I'll say that much, and there's lots of, man, we're gonna talk about gameplay again, because it's really wrangling my jimmies. There's sections where, like, previously in the old games, you would have to hide from gunfire or from Sligs just like scoping you out behind barriers or something like that. That gameplay is still here, except now, at least in like the first half of the game, they can shoot through the barriers, so you can't just like wait behind that barrier and assess what you want to do next. You have to be quick, and like you have to be jumping around. There are actually sections of the game where you have to like jump over projectiles. It's an action platform. Anyway, back to the story. So the Soulstorm brew is no longer made out of Mudokon bones. So we do eventually get to Necrom, but now I'm not really sure why we do. Like, we're just kind of going through Necrom. I don't know. So like that urgency and that terror is gone. Finding out that your people are enslaved is horrifying. Finding out that your people are enslaved and being processed into soft drink or soda pop, as the case may be, and that your own people are actually drinking that product and getting sick, that's fucking terrifying, man.
Help!
What happens here instead? Mild spoilers. So like, spoiler warning if you don't want to know anything about Soulstorm, if you want to play it. Here it is. The new Soulstorm brew is just developed as like crack cocaine. It's meant to keep the Mudokons working, because when they stop drinking it, they die. So it's kind of like slave collars. If they go too far away, they blow up. It's like that sort of thing. They're crack slaves now, that's horrible, but it's kind of not as horrific. The whole game just feels like it's been modernized. Instead of being about this ancient culture that was conquered and industrialized, which I think is still relevant because people are still talking about that sort of stuff today. You know, people are very much on this, you know, anti-colonialism thing. So I think that story, the original story, is still very, very relevant and might have actually hit a little harder. But instead now they're doing like corporate greed, anti-corporate, which the original was about too, make no mistake, but now like that's the full focus. It's now a lot more about the corporate world building than the mysticism and the culture that was lost, which I think is, at least maybe it's just for me, it resonated more with me. The new direction, kind of less so. I just feel like they lost something there, and that's subjective, absolutely. Some people might like the new direction. It's not for me. I mean, I miss the old story. The old story was really good. Luckily, we still have Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exoddus. They're on GOG, and I will be playing them again, make no mistake. Alright, something else that's different here, I'll just come out and say it. There's no Scrabs or Paramites at all. Paramites are mentioned once in the form of Paramite pies. That's it. They're not in the game at all. I was waiting for that section of the game, and it happens in both Odyssey and Exoddus, where you go into the Scrab land and the Paramite land, Paramania, Scrabania, the vaults, the Mudokon vaults and whatnot, where you have to go through this area and that area to unlock this area, you know, to progress, and you get to choose, do I want to combat Scrabs first, or do I want to combat the Paramites first? That doesn't happen. In fact, nothing like that happens. You don't get that crossroads choice that then comes back into a single story. Ultimately, that's pretty superficial. It doesn't matter which one you do first. It's just, you know, which one would you like to do first? It's personal preference, but it still kind of kept it fresh. Plus, there's just the fact that there's no Paramites and Scrabs at all in the game. It's just, what? It's This feels really weird to me. Now, maybe I'm coming across like a bit of a sweaty nerd who's like, oh, they didn't put my favorite character in the game. Granted, you know, maybe if that's how I'm coming across, I apologize. It's not my intent. I just feel that Paramites and Scribes are so integral to the Oddworld, as it were. That it's just weird not to have them, you know? Like I said, the game is just very much more about the corporate world building, which you can argue, all right, cool, we haven't really had a lot of that before, so that's cool. Granted, again, you know, I'll admit that this is subjective. You know, you might enjoy the new direction, whereas it's not for me, but I miss that, man. You know, I feel like the corporate world building loses some of the weight, some of the horror of what they're doing to the Mudokons and Oddworld as a whole, because you don't get to see what they're doing. You see all the politicking behind the scenes of the Gluckons, and it's funny, you know, because it's still that quirky sense of humor. They haven't lost that. And as far as I understand, all, or most at least, of the original voice actors have returned, which is really, really cool. The voice acting is top-notch. It's as top-notch as it's always been. There's so much character in all of these characters, and that's why I say I kind of wanted this to be a movie more than I wanted it to be a game. I think as a game, it's not as engaging as it could have been as a movie, for example. But they're game developers, so, you know, we got a game, and that's understandable. That's fair enough. The mysticism and the ancient culture was so... It just captivated me. And again, personal preference, that's just me, but that was so important to me. I love that stuff. Look, I don't want to go on too much more about it. I tried my best not to turn this into a "this game sucks" video, because I don't want to make those videos. I really don't. I turn down a lot of offers for games because I don't want to make videos about games I don't like. You know, that's not what this channel's about. That's not what I'm about. But ultimately, I love this series so much, and I don't think they've done it justice, not personally. That being said, from what I've seen, a lot of people seem to like Soulstorm. That's cool. That's totally cool. You know, if you like Soulstorm, honestly, I'm jealous. I am. I'm glad that you like it, and I'm jealous that you do. What I'm trying to say is, if you're not satisfied by Soulstorm, if anything I've said here kind of makes you go, ooh, yeah, that's not for me, go to GOG, man. Get Abe's Oddysee, Abe's Exoddus. They still hold up. They're so good. The precision of the movement, you know exactly what Abe can do. Oh, and just like one more thing, Abe felt helpless in the first one. He did. He was kind of a stooge, and it was kind of a helpless stooge. So it added to the tension. It was kind of a miracle that he got through at all. In the new one, Abe feels a little more like an action hero. He's still a stooge, but now he's kind of like an idiot as well. There's multiple sections where characters in the game tell him exactly what to do, and then he spends like the next hour or two of gameplay just going like, oh man, I don't know what to do. What am I gonna do? I'm so lost. Dude, you were just told exactly what to do. What's the issue here? It's... Anyway, guys, go play Abe's Oddysee and Abe's Exoddus. If you want to play Soulstorm, it's on Epic right now, so you know, I imagine that's going to turn off a lot of you. If you really want to play Soulstorm, I would recommend wait for a sale, unfortunately. I hate saying this. I really want Oddworld inhabitants to do well, but what do you want from me, man? What do you want? I don't like it. I don't like Soulstorm. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments, have you played Abe's Oddysee, Abe's Exoddus? What did you think of them? Have you played Soulstorm yet? What do you think of Soulstorm? Were you excited for Soulstorm as a fan of Oddysee and Exoddus? And you know what? Let me know about the two kind of odd games, the out-of-place games, Munch's Oddysee and Stranger's Wrath. I haven't finished them. I've only played a very small amount of Munch's Oddysee, and I haven't played Stranger's Wrath at all. So let me know what you think of those games, because I'm given to understand that they're fairly beloved, you know? Maybe they've got a little bit of a cult following, so talk them up, you know, and convince me to play them. That's what I want to play them. Convince me to play them, get me excited to play them. But for the moment, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time. Ricky Summer, out.